Clubhouse.
Welcome back to another episode of Escaping Gilead. This is for the second episode of the 6th season of The Handmaid's Tale. This is Paul.
This is Caroline.
This episode was called Exile. This one, like the first one, was directed by Elizabeth Moss, and even before I saw that credit, given the way that some of the scenes were shot and edited, I had a hunch.
Yeah, she tends to do these more, I would consider them very artistic, kind of sweeping visuals. We get a lot of those cinematic shots, like when we had the woman outside the church and Serena outside the church, and the church was like nicely composed, really symmetrically and beautifully, with the lights and trees hanging over and all the things. Now, since we do a podcast with Beth Kushnick, who is an amazing Hollywood/New York set decorator, she would tell us all that like those branches of the trees are just probably being like tied to the edges so that they hang over so beautifully and everything. But I thought a lot of the shots were really beautiful and really had these like tender moments, these softer, quieter, human, a lot of women talking to women kind of moments.
That's what I noticed, especially those moments of June and Holly, Serena with her hostess. Mm-hmm. It's not a Vaseline on the lens effect, but it is not the harsh contrasts that we get when we're in Gilead.
Yes.
It's a softer, less
militant,
glowy effect, and the scenes are allowed to play out. There's a ease to the pace. Something jives with her style from episode to episode.
I feel like we needed this breather episode is how it felt to me. It was like an airing of the past. There was some respite. There was some recharge. And there were some new paths that were forged in this one that we're going to talk all about.
I have two subtitles for this one, Exile. The first one is a Godfather 3 quote. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. And the second one is less concise. It's mostly something having to do with daddy issues and a story about moms.
Oh, okay. All right. I hear that. Who would you like to start with?
Well, we have 4 main plot lines, and I feel like June and Serena are meant to parallel each other in that they show us their journeys and where their starting point is going to be for the downhill part of the rest of the season. I don't mean downhill in quality. I mean like downhill, like buckle up. You're only going to be able to just hold on. You're
hearing the click, click, click of the roller coaster in this episode?
Yeah, for both of them. So the more lightweight stories occur in Gilead and Toronto.
Who could imagine saying the more lightweight story happens in Gilead? Oh, how the world has turned upside down.
Well, just the Alaska and I'll probably think that that's maybe British Columbia or something that Serena is in. Those were made with such easy pacing and poignancy and warmth that it's a heavier emotional feel for those.
So where do you want to start?
Why don't we just start in Toronto with Tuello, Moira, and Luke and that whole story?
So I was very glad that Mark got Luke out on bail. I was bummed that it looks like we're going to have to wait for a while for a hearing, which is not what I wanted. If you guys remember from my last episode, I was like, I kind of need the Luke storyline to just be wrapped up quickly because it's just a red tape bureaucracy kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, we know that so far they've shown the Canadian justice system to be pretty fair and reasonable. Everything we've seen looks fair and reasonable. So I'm expecting and desiring as an audience member that Luke's portion of this does not take up a ton of time. Every single time June called back and was like, I need to know about your hearing or whatever, I was like, no, we don't. Like, let's just wrap it up over there because there's no good reason, even though Tuello was very good to point out to audience members, hey, if you guys are wondering why this is so serious and why we just can't so easily sweep it under the rug, this was a refugee who killed a Canadian citizen. So that's why we're running into so much more stickiness than I think if it had been refugee on refugee issue or something else, then I think this would be completely over.
I understand that he probably can't just buy like another train ticket or whatever,
Right.
but I mean,
how are you feeling?
Let's just get the F out of Canada at this point.
But where are you going?
To Alaska.
Well, he can't leave. You know he can't leave, right? You're just saying you desire.
No, I mean,
this?
physically, he probably could. You'd have to jump in a car. You'd have to be sneaky. But yeah, he could do it. People skip out on this kind of thing.
I guess that's true.
All the time.
I guess that's true. I just don't. I mean, I guess I want Luke to be on the up and up. I want him to really be untangled from this situation with the law because we don't want anything extra holding back the storyline. You know, I want them to be able to be on the move, which it looks like they're going to be. So just to reiterate for everybody, if you guys haven't watched this episode, please go watch because we're going to be spoiling the heck out of it for you guys, but we're not going to recap. So we're not going to go through every little thing that happened, but you guys know what Mark told him. And you guys know that I just see Luke and Moira and Rita and Mark needing to put their head down and focus all their attention on Mayday, which really leaves this legal storyline kind of dangling.
I seem to recall Luke absorbing some criticism either in the show or from fans about his toe-in approach to the issue, where he, in this episode, is super fired up to do something. He wants to knock heads.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really seen that from Luke before. Luke's done what he's needed to do, but that's it.
He's had moments. There's other times when I think we do all get a little bit wary of how polite sometimes Luke would be. But I think that side of him is pretty worn down at this point. I mean, killing a man like with your bare hands, that's going to change you.
He had it coming.
Totally did. I don't disagree with what Luke did. I don't think even as somebody who is in the right, I don't think you get out unscathed. So I think you are going to become a more hardened person and definitely, feel like you need to make some serious moves because the world is not going to let you be. And I think that's what that whole truck storyline is really important for us to kind of remember just from that standpoint. Not necessarily the legality, not necessarily what's going to happen next with a trial or whatever, but the point of they couldn't just stay put in that house. It was clear, like trouble was literally coming to their doorstep. And it was very well displayed with, so visually, so viscerally, her getting her arm run over, like they're going to keep coming after you. And that comes up in this episode too. Like you can try to keep running, but we all kind of know where you are or people around know where you are. And we're going to find you anyway. The fight's going to be brought to you if you don't come fight.
Speaking of fight, though, what I thought was compelling, really interesting, is how in the way that the story has unfolded, the United States is basically being driven to become a terrorist state. One way that people can look at Star Wars, even though they don't, is that there's a perfectly working government that is under the assault of a group of terrorists, which happen to be Luke, Han, and Leia. And in this case, there's Gilead, which, we don't trust or like. But now the United States is being put in a position where guys like Tuelu, who are by the numbers guys, are having to go out and support terrorist organizations like Mayday. Yes, they're freedom fighters, whatever you want to call them, but depending on your perspective, they're terrorists, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think that's just a really interesting way to look at it. Like the United States has become that.
Desperation. That is the word of the whole show. But I feel like this season in particular, I think because there's some actual morsels of real hope and real, like the doors cracked open here or there, things are starting to move in a different direction. That feels like there is a sort of second wind feel about everything for everyone across the board, both good and bad. So we have got this Mayday group, this group of ragtag individuals who are kind of reinvigorated to try again. And I'm excited to see what they think they can do. What do you think about the Nick Mark meetup and then Nick throwing something in the fire.
Nick has been needing to walk this fine line. He's refused to completely 100% pick a side. That has been meant as a way to try to protect June and by extension Nichole, or vice versa, depending on which way you want to look at it. However, the deeper he goes with his Gilead life, the more danger it poses to him to continue on with his affiliation with Mark and trying to be a double agent. I don't know that he's completely out of it, but I think the conversation with his dad-in-law scared the shit out of him, and that his dad might know something or suspect him or is looking into him.
He definitely seems really suspicious. So I agree with you. So I want to be clear. So Paul and I watch screeners. So we've seen this in advance to you guys, which means we are not, we don't have the luxury of all of the conversation around the show that happens as you guys watch it. So we have to talk about it before you guys have all seen it. So right at this second, it looked like a SIM card that he was throwing into the fireplace.
Yeah.
But I am unclear, and I'll only speak for myself. You say what you think you saw. I'm not sure if that SIM card is something that he was given by Mark, or if maybe that was a SIM card he was going to give to Mark. Either which way, what it represented to me was some piece of helping June and Nichole and Mayday generally, that he decided at the last second, I'm not going to do it. I'm throwing in the fire. So as we get closer to the actual episode airing, maybe we'll see it more clearly as to was he handed it something by Mark, or is this something?
The phone, and so by burning the SIM card, he disables that phone.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. But I didn't know. Also, I mean, there's some sort of chance, right? That I don't know. There could have been something else on the SIM card, is what I'm trying to say. That could go the other way. But I'm with you. I thought that was the series of events that Mark gave it to him. So obviously now, I mean, Nick's not answering the phone, and we've got dad-in-law completely hovering all over him. Do you think that is an effective story device here, to have the father-in-law just move himself into Nick's world?
It would have been great to get a little bit more Josh Charles before this season. And if he did pop up, my apologies. But
he did, but you're right in terms of what is the whole background on him? Yeah.
Because the way that this government is set up, they're all called commanders.
Right.
But you could be commander of janitorial services and commander of the country, and it seems to be all commanders.
Right.
So it's hard to tell who's in charge of who.
Or who outranks who.
Yes.
Is the biggest deal. Because we were discussing, does Lawrence have more pull, or does father-in-law have more pull? Not really sure. I mean, surely he doesn't have any issue questioning Lawrence. I mean, he comes to that meeting and is very willing to question, what are you doing? How are you doing this with Serena Joy? Everything that was going on with that was shocking to me. I was like, oh my God. They are going to try to drag her back in. This is really going to happen. How did you feel about that?
I wonder if the motivation for pulling her in as the face of New Bethlehem is just to have her as the face of New Bethlehem, or if there's something else that commander is interested in with her.
I think it's also egg on your face, though, to have this woman be out in the world, and you've kind of labeled her as this global diplomat, this person who's going to be the face of your organization, and she's kind of just MIA.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think that there's a huge portion of this that's maybe there is a bigger plan longer term about, obviously, we know getting her back for New Bethlehem. We see how this episode plays out, but we can't have such a high ranking defector.
Yeah.
That can't be. So we have to have her back. We have to have her back on a stage somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's almost like Lawrence forgot about her. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then the moment he leaves, he's like to Nick, we got to find her.
But you know why? I think it's because Lawrence actually cares about trying to create some sort of community, society, country, and is a little less, well, certainly less than most, vindictive and caring about that part of it, about if somebody gets out, he wanted to create this new Bethlehem portion, this mercy, this forgiveness, we can all do this with more flexibility and more kindness, I guess, in some way, kids gloves on in some way, right? He seems like he wants to lean that way and try to offer this softer version of Gilead, which is, I know everybody's rolling their eyes and being like, how? What are you talking about? But he's not the Waterford version of Gilead, is the point. He's not like the crack the whip. He wants what he wants to be accomplished, but I don't think it has to be done with a whip and a chair the way that Fred wanted to do it or Serena wanted to do it.
We haven't seen any further than this episode, but what you were describing there created a scenario in my mind. Because we've been wondering, how is it that Lawrence figures into the rest of the plot, right?
Okay.
We've suspected that New Bethlehem is smoke and mirrors, although he seems to be a true believer. He pitches it to Serena. He's spearheading it. He's in charge of this thing, and he thinks it's the real deal. However, I think you and I suspect that once they get a crop of people in there, one way or the other, some of those people are going to be disappeared. You know, they're just going to be pulled back into Gilead. They're going to not exist anymore or something. I don't know.
I think you're right, like either by brainwashing or by just brute force.
And when that happens, if that happens, that is the catalyst for Lawrence to become an asset to June, to others, because he'll feel burned. He'll feel betrayed. Let's
move over to Serena Joy for a minute, because I want to talk about her adventure, and then I want to cross paths here with Lawrence and what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, because I think that moment of Serena Joy being in New Bethlehem, a leader and the original leader, plus Lawrence, the current, feels he is the head of this, creates this potential
interesting
conflict that suddenly we've got vying for power in New Bethlehem. So let's go over to Serena Joy and talk a little bit about what happens with her. So last week, if you guys remember, she flew off the train sort of involuntarily via June. And thankfully, she landed safe and sound. That was very cinematic. All of the forestry shot, everything they were showing her walking through the woods, and of course, seeing a church in the distance. What did you think about all that? What did you think about who she met? Was this all believable, or was it just like super convenient that she found these very open-armed ladies?
I bought it. I bought it all. Yeah, I liked it. It gives us a perspective into Serena that we need. Like, she can have the peaceful life. She can have the everyday life. She won't take it. She won't have it.
So here were some key moments in the Serena Joy journey that really like popped my eyes out of my head. Obviously, the arriving at the church and that whole flashback portion with her dad and having these memories of how her entire concept of how the world should run and faith-based ideas obviously originated with her father, who now we saw, if we didn't know before, he's clearly a religious figure, whether he's a pastor, reverend, what have you, not sure. But it showed that to me, as a daughter, she was trying to make her father proud. And since he is the head of a church from his pulpit and all this kind of stuff, she obviously, this was the avenue to get to dad and to show that she is, you know, someone he should be proud of. I have to tell you that they show those beautiful garden, and when the dad is still doing health-wise, looks like okay. To see the house and the garden turn into a shack and like it was all dried up. I mean, what do you think about that visual? What do you think we're supposed to get out of all of that?
Well, let's kind of piece it together. Let's see. Dad inspires her. She writes this book. The sons of Jacob basically take her book and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a way, her dad is maybe not an architect, but a foundational figure in the Gilead theocratic government. We come back to him, though, like moments before the overthrow, and his own condition is poor. We don't know if he can talk in that scene.
Right.
You know, we know
he's
that
obviously declined a lot.
Yes. and the house matches his condition. She clearly hasn't been back in a while. She mentions that she doesn't get back enough to tend the roses as often as she'd like to.
Which is kind of laughable because there's nothing but just dirt and
the problem isn't overgrown roses.
Brown, right. It's a mess. So how I was taking it was, if you think about tending a garden and you think about all the care and the love and the nurturing and just the constant attention that situation needs, I feel like I've heard people refer to their faith as a garden and the idea of like tending to it and keeping it up, basically. So I feel like there's something very symbolic about this place that she came from, this garden, this maybe original Garden of Eden kind of feel that she originated from. This garden, this father figure, who you want to make proud and all this kind of stuff. And how her thinking and her values and her taking the time to go write this book actually neglected her true origin, what her true value system was, because she wasn't like the shepherd tending her flock. She wasn't the gardener tending the garden. She abandoned and neglected all of her original place. And to me, there's something to that. There's something about turning your back on where you came from originally and having that fall apart and deteriorate, because I think it sort of represents like the rot of her concept, right? And because that's sort of how it goes with Gilead, right? It's like, I had this idea and it all went crazy. And Serena verbalizes that.
Yeah.
Did you expect that the woman that actually answered the door did recognize her from Go, that already knew that was Serena Joy?
Expect it? No, but I mean, we saw on the train, people knew. She had the book tour.
Well, she had been on the Jumbotron for the funeral.
She'd been on the Jumbotron, yes.
So, and everybody knew who she was.
Exactly, yes.
So, so I agree with you. I think especially when she said, "What should we call you?" That was tricky because that wasn't "What is your name?" And I think when she said that, that's the wink to all of us. Like, I know her name, but I'm going to ask her what we're all going to call her, because we're obviously not going to call her real name.
Right.
So we're not going to acknowledge that we know who she is. But I was surprised as time went on, and it was a couple months. I wonder what prompted that woman that day to decide to say something.
Maybe it was hoping, because running a place like that, you've got to be a hopeful person, right?
I think, yeah.
And so...
optimistic at least, right?
Yeah. And so maybe after a couple months of seeing Serena Joy and the simple life with Noah picking berries or whatever they were doing out in the garden.
Doing her part, right?
That she could accept this life, even though she knows. She knows what she did, but she's still welcome. Just kind of laying it out there that the ruse is up.
Yeah.
But you're still okay here.
And that you can trust us because we haven't bothered you for the last 2 months, and we all knew the whole time who you were, and we haven't done anything to you. So, maybe there's some safety here with this group of women and children. I definitely thought that the theme of women and children was huge, obviously, in this episode, always. But in this one, there was a lot of moments between moms and kids and a lot of yearning, I think, for those two to be together and be safe, and all these different pockets of people who are dealing with this and in different ways. And I should go back and say, beyond just motherhood, though, we do have this parenthood concept, this
a search of a father figure.
The father, right? Because we've got Nick, who's, we're talking a lot about his love for Nichole will push him to do XYZ, but we can see that his love for his wife, for Rose, the fear that father-in-law brings along, and the new baby that's coming there, it's obviously going to be a whole problem. So that's, you've got the dad of Rose showing that generational love, between himself and his grown daughter. But then you have Nick, showing his fatherly love towards the kids. And I think it's funny that we see Commander Lawrence when the little one's playing under the desk.
Yeah.
And Angela's under there, and it like startles him like it's like a rat or a mouse or something, right? Like an infestation of children, because he's like, when it happens. But it was really interesting how that whole room of 3 men softened with her. If you guys listen to the tone of their voices, now that's a real live young child. So I'm sure on some level, those 3 men they were still humans. So even if they're playing parts, there was still a softness. Like Lawrence is like, we're having a meeting. He says in this funny little voice to her. And I just was like, wow, to see all of them soften up a little bit felt good and necessary to see that like they are not all devils, that they actually have this little bit of soft side. And I think we'll talk about that soft side and all the warnings from Holly coming. But going back to Serena Joy for just a minute, when the car pulls up, that dark car pulls up, were you thinking it was Lawrence and Naomi? Were you thinking it was Guardians or Eyes or someone else or Mark or anybody else?
Lawrence makes the most sense.
Were you surprised that he knew exactly where she was?
I was surprised that there was no in between where it was just like, we need to find her. I'll ask the Eyes. Boom, I'm there.
But that's a really good, important part of this informational when we're doing our like world building. That is how well connected Gilead is.
It made me wonder if the hostess ratted on her. Now, she didn't.
Well, it was the same day though that she says about the Serena Joy, and then here he pulls up. That's why I asked you, do you think there was a reason why she decided to say, hey, nudge, nudge, poke, poke, I know you're Serena Joy?
Well, maybe the hostess
and also, can we remember, Serena, that we've been nice to you for the last 2 months? Because maybe she knows a commander is going to be driving up here. And while it's not Gilead, and while it's not, it is private land and they are trespassing everything, there's something about, I'm not saying that the hostess necessarily told, but see how that's like, hold on a second. Why would she want to remind Serena Joy in that moment that A, we knew who you were this whole time, and B, we've been nice to you this entire time. I want to point out how nice we've been to you. So like, to me, that was all like the laying out the table here to be like, so when your peeps show up here, you best not, point them towards us in any form or fashion.
There had to be a rat, because as far as we know, Eyes are men. And men aren't really welcome around that
I would think they would not be.
That farm. They said this is a community for mothers and children, right?
Yeah.
And so if a man shows up, maybe he's dropping off some food or something, but he should be getting going again.
I would think.
So that's what makes me think there's a rat.
It does make me wonder. Now, here's the thing. Does it matter? Are we ever going to go back to this group of people? Probably not. But there's something about the lack of a search for Serena Joy that I want to point out. That Lawrence clearly in his office had no idea where Serena Joy was.
No idea.
Whether Nick knew or didn't, I don't know. Because he's like, do you know where she is? And Nick totally looked to the side and was like, brr. Can't say, don't know. So maybe he truly didn't know. Maybe he kind of had an idea. But why everybody has ideas and how this network of spies is working, that should make us wonder. Because if there are spies within a community that's supposed to be moms and kids who would be willing to rat out to Gilead, that nugget of information is important. Maybe not that particular group, but the fact that there could be embedded spies who are women in what appears to be safe homes, I think we should pay attention to.
We have other communities to worry about. We have New Bethlehem. We have that little tidbit that Rita wants to go there.
I know.
And I think she's going to go.
Here's the thing. They really hit the nail on the head when they figured out that people were going to be so desperately looking for family members that if we could make this like reunion point at New Bethlehem, that somehow, they're using the same exact verbiage in saying to June, you can live next to Hannah. You could be right there. You could also have Nick and Nichole, and you could have everybody you want all in the same place, all at the same time. And you could see how that would be very attractive to Rita, to June, to Serena. Were you surprised that Lawrence and Naomi, their meal, how that all sort of unfolded?
It was interesting that Naomi had no idea how to give a blessing, but I guess in Gilead, there'd be no call for a woman to bless a meal. Yeah, I don't think that would happen. So she did about as good a job as I would do.
But a little bit, I think that was also another glimpse into like the paper thin nature of their beliefs. Like when push comes to shove, if you just say like, hey, can you say a little prayer? They're like, no, I don't know how. Like I pray on the inside. or I don't really, or she starts rambling through. And then Serena Joy seeing this opportunity. I mean, that dinner was like a tiny little microcosm of like how this probably worked. Like she saw people fumbling to look faithful.
These boobs need my leadership.
Yes. But I think she thought that back in her father's garden. And I think that's the same mindset that came back to her at that dinner, where she's like, these people are playing house. They're playing to be religious. They're playing to love God. But like, they can't even say a simple meal prayer without me stepping in and like adding all this glorious language and all of these big ideas and everything. You could see her sitting at the head of the table, and you could see her just like get filled up with this moment of her preaching to the group, and how much it just, I mean, she came alive, you know? I mean, she sat up taller. She was the biggest, baddest version of her we've seen in a long time. I mean, when they follow her all the way through in silent montage to, and by silent, of course, there's music, but I mean, no dialogue, montage to New Bethlehem, the strut she gives walking down to the water.
Big, long strides.
Shoulders back, head up, like, I deserve this white picket fence life.
And the first time that we've seen this new color. It's not a wife color. It's not a handmaid color.
We're in like mauve.
Or wine.
Yeah, it's something. It is something. So maybe they're going to come up with some new Bethlehem wardrobe that you're not a handmaid, you're not a wife, you're not a Martha, like you're not an aunt. So what color are you wearing, and how are you doing this exactly?
Remember, Lawrence claims women can live alone,
read,
right, have a job.
I don't know about have a job.
No, he said that they can run a business. Yeah.
Run a business. You're right. He did use the words run a business. You're right. I feel like he means like you can like have a garden and sell some to your neighbors.
Right.
I think that's
some
what
sort
he
of crafts.
means. Yeah, like a craft, or you can like bake some stuff and sell it at a bake sale, like the New Bethlehem bake sale. It's like NBBS, New Bethlehem bake sale. That's a big
like,
deal.
Great, more cross-shaped cookies. Just put them over there.
Nice. Oh, Lord. So she went back. I mean, this is a revelation, Paul. Serena Joy is back. Even if she's in Gilead Light, which is what we're going to think of New Bethlehem as. What the hell? I mean, this is a big pivot in the story. Although we knew she wasn't long for the outside free world, right? It always seemed like whether she was going to be captured or not. And what do you think about that? Would you have willingly gone? Or when Lawrence says, you know, like, you can stay here. You're like, you're cool to stay here. But just FYI, everybody knows where you're at. So you can play that hand as long as you like. But
it doesn't take much imagination to picture eyes seizing.
Swarming.
Right. Just illegally moving in to another country, maybe even killing all the other women and children there.
I think they'd steal all the kids.
Just to drag her away
Yep.
back to hell with the Wheelers.
Ugh. And the Wheelers, what a good threat the Wheelers were, right?
Yeah.
Because it was one thing to sort of be like, oh, Gilead knows where you're at. And she's sort of like, yeah, whatever. When they said the Wheelers, I think that was like the kiss of death.
And it might not even be her. They might just take the baby.
Oh, 1,000%. Yes.
A lot less trouble if you just take the baby.
Yes.
For the Wheelers.
I would say yes. So, all right. So if you're Serena Joy, you're going?
Yeah. They built up enough scaffolding in the story throughout, and especially in this episode, to tell us that her character believes that Gilead went wrong, and she's being offered a chance to set it right. Lawrence spells out that if these reforms in New Bethlehem work out, they might spill over into the rest of Gilead, which would be great for her because that's what her intent was from the beginning. She didn't want to get shut out of things when the overthrow occurred. She was as surprised as everybody else.
Exactly. And I think that when you were watching Serena go through this process with these women, I feel like she was again reinvigorated because Go back to the garden story. When was she filling it? When her hands were in the dirt, when she was making something, when she was tending to the garden. That's what started this origin for her. So going back and spending weeks and weeks and weeks with her hands back in the garden, back in the dirt, back with the people who in her mind had more of her same values, right? I think this is where you're literally watching someone like refill their cup. It's for bad, like we don't want it, but like when the whole like, take care of yourself, put your life mat, your oxygen mask on yourself first. Serena literally did that for 8 weeks. She put her oxygen mask on herself and Noah, but she got back to the earth. When people say touch grass, that's supposed to be your like get back in touch with reality. As messed up as it is, this is Serena's reality. This is the reality she longs for. So when you see her actually get her hands dirty and get back in there, and then you watch how that creates this monster again, it's like Serena should never have another gardening glove pair again, Paul. Never again could you use gardening gloves.
What do you make of the few close-up shots that we got of her pinky sling?
Ooh, I did notice that.
Is she just over it? She's just like, well, or is we meant to be reminded of the consequences of dealing with Gilead?
I think it was a good reminder for the audience. I mean, I don't know if Serena is just so desensitized to having it that maybe it doesn't matter that much to her, but they bothered to mention in episode 1. They bothered to say, remember,
they took her pinky.
Yeah, June on the train.
Finger.
They took her finger. She's been punished. Everybody like lay off of her. And then you're right. Episode 2, now they keep showing it that she's holding the baby, but the focus was from like underneath the baby where it was shooting right on that pinky. And you're right. It is a very good audience reminder of like, hey, do you guys remember? Like as much as you might think, head to New Bethlehem, you got 9 fingers left, I guess.
Right.
But like, this is bad news, right?
Yeah.
So Serena strutting back into Gilead, told she can be independent, single woman with a business, reading and writing, doing her own thing. How long you think it lasts? How many episodes before there's like going to be a massive... First of all, I think the conflict is going to be
less than 1.
Between Lawrence... The conflict is going to be between Lawrence and Serena Joy.
Yeah.
Because the rest of Gilead, I think, is going to start pushing on Lawrence and be like, you're being too nice with New Bethlehem. We need stricter rules. No, she can't live alone. No, she can't not be married. New Bethlehem was not meant to be a single woman, colony situation. Like I could see these other commanders coming in being like, first of all, we were going to live here. Remember Nick and Rose live here? Like this isn't meant to be like your trash heap of like leftovers, So I am curious if the heat from Lawrence might have him start pushing on Serena and Serena having to sort of exert whatever power she manages to gather, which she will. She will figure out how to gather power in that place. But I think she'd rather be the queen of hell than a peasant in the rest of the world.
And to your point, I believe it'll happen within the next episode.
You do? Just that quick?
Yeah, just she's going to say, all right, Lawrence, let's have a meeting. Here's my plans. And he's like, and he'll say, that's interesting plans. We can't do any of that.
Or maybe we could do some of that. And then he takes that back and the rest of the commanders go, Joseph, we're not doing any of it. Because that's what I think. I don't think that it's going to be Lawrence who's going to not play ball with Serena because he wants New Bethlehem to work. It's that he's going to get pressure from, I think that's why you have dad-in-law hanging around, because he's going to get the pressure from the rest of the commanders, probably via the father-in-law, because father-in-law's going to be living next door to the single mother. That's not what he signed up for. Father-in-law
didn't actually ever say, I'm behind New Bethlehem. He said, I'm surprised that it seems to be picking up steam.
Your little project.
Yeah.
Your little project. When you say little, your little project, that's all bad news bears. So Serena Joy, you guys, wow. All right, so we're going to leave our Lawrence, Gilead, Serena Joy storyline and head back over to June and Holly.
In Alaska. Nice, long, warm shots. I've already described it, but you can just kind of feel like There's something about seeing shots like that instill a feeling of warmth and family mushiness and all that. It does a very effective job of pulling you into the story they're trying to tell. I mean, they skip 2 months. Mm-hmm. I think that's wonderful. We can assume that
I agree.
June and Holly got along famously through that whole time.
I think so too. And I told you in the last episode, I was like, please, let's not have an argument between them. Please not have like a sudden disagreement on how to approach things or what to do. And we got a little bit of that in this episode. Thankfully, very thankfully, it was quick.
Yeah.
It was quick. We had a disagreement.
June had a low blow.
There was a low blow. We frown at June. But that back and forth went.
She was abducted. She didn't abandon you.
Exactly. And yeah.
There's a difference.
That was an ugly thing to say. She knew it. She knew it was a terrible thing to say.
Yeah,
she felt terrible. We've all been there. We've all said rude things to our moms. And after the fact, we say, I am so sorry. That was so terrible. Yeah. And if you haven't, go apologize to your mom, y'all. Go say you're sorry. My mom's not around anymore. I told you in the last episode. So I spend a lot of time being like, I hope she knows I was sorry about XYZ because I was a troublesome teenager. But it was really heartwarming to see June and Holly. And actually, it was wonderful to expand the sphere of moms looking for their kids, because we had been at this level of June and sort of the Marthas and sort of all the handmaids, these people, right? That's where we were looking for our kids. But to have the next generation, Holly looking for her daughter, a handmaid, we hadn't had that. So it was amazing to remind the audience, like, it's not just the little children that were taken. You never stop being your mother's baby, you know? And I thought Holly and June did a beautiful job of showing, first of all, how much that affected June. I mean, her heart was like, Mom, you were looking for me. Like, it was like, oh, because I don't know. I think in her mind, she was looking for her mom. And we were missing the component of her mom was always looking for her.
You could have a whole other show with Holly.
Oh, man, that'd be awesome, actually.
Being abducted, taken to the colonies. She was very light on the details.
Yeah.
About what went down in the colonies.
Which was interesting because, honestly, June, you felt that with her vibe. Like, she was like, Mom, how did you get away? Like, because you're right. She was real tippy-toey. She wasn't given the
Holly
gross.
had to do some shit.
It's clear Holly had to do some bad shit because, I mean, when you have to say, stop tippy-toeing around and tell me how did you get out of there? I mean, that was everything that you knew nobody's telling. But here's the thing. Holly's like, okay, then tell me what happened to you. Mm-hmm. What do you think about June's retelling of what happened to her?
Brisk. She had like nothing. You
don't
even know what I've had to do, Mom.
Would you have wanted more? Do we need that as an audience, or do we need to see, or should it have been like, Mom, I'll tell you tomorrow or something, and then they're off screen, they have some sort of discussion or something?
We've talked about this on this podcast and other podcasts, every podcast that we've had on TV shows. We suppose that there are these off-screen conversations because how could you not talk about whatever these subjects are?
After months of being together? I mean, I understand, of course, you give it the first couple weeks of you guys just feeling it back out of like your own relationship. But you're right. At some point, when everyone has got, I mean, it's kind of like pandemic or something, right? For us, where it's like everyone has their own pandemic story of what happened with their own little family. Where were you? What did you have to lock down? Where did you get displaced? Anything would happen. It's like we have these little tiny, I mean, they're not the same as Gilead, you guys. I will never imply that I'm saying something similar, but there was something about what's your story? Like, what did you actually go through? That you're right. Holly's super light on details. June even more light on details.
June might have said, in preparation for going to no man's land, she might have said, I'm kind of Gilead's most wanted person.
But here's the deal. Holly wouldn't know that. That's where I'm unsure about some of how the information gets through. Because again, Serena Joy, easily found. in a farm in the middle of rural Canada. Easily found. No big deal.
Mm.
But we've got Luke and Moira stuck in no man's land. You know, we don't know where anybody is, right? We can't figure stuff out.
Thousands of square miles of the United States, former United States.
But and it's like, does Lawrence know where they are? Does Lawrence know they're out there? Like, who else knows what? That was like, that's a little bit of a curiosity of this episode, because it feels a little bit like a lot of different scenes stopped short before you fully understood who knew what and who was telling like kind of a half truth and who was pointing you in the wrong direction. Like when they said, do you know where Serena Joy is? And Nick's like, does he know? Do eyes know? Did other people know? It's curious. And we're starting to get little side eyes, you know, and that's not new at all in Gilead, my lord. They could just be called under his side eye, right? But it's a whole thing. But I definitely feel like we were getting that vibe. I feel like as an audience member, I was supposed to understand more people know more about what each other is doing than we're showing you. And even in the conversation between Holly and June, it was like, obviously June knew a lot more about the colonies, and Holly was just like trying to keep it real light.
If Holly had been in the colonies up until like 6 months ago,
she'd seen the video of her mom, remember?
Then you might be able to accept that news getting to the colonies would be sparse.
Oh, I think non-existent. Why
we
would
saw
there
the
be?
Colonies, and it was
crazy,
bleak.
Yeah.
And within their society, she would have been known as Offred or Commander Waterford's handmaid,
and then of Lawrence,
right? And so
of Joseph. Pardon me.
Right, you're right. Her making the connection that those are all June Osborne.
That's true.
Without someone saying, psst, by the way,
that was June.
It's plausible. It's plausible to me that she wouldn't have enough to connect the dots.
I'm very unsure.
Now, there's been
actually.
6 months. But.
Yeah, but I'm very unsure because how this episode ends with June turning around in that room of Mayday and being like, my name is June. And like that whole thing, like obviously that was meant for trailers, meant for, you know, that quick clip, you know.
Classic Elizabeth Moss looking right in the camera.
Right into the camera. Yes, exactly. And that was all awesome and very powerful, because you're right. Maybe in that moment, again, we don't know who Offred is. We don't know who of Joseph is. So when she turns on and says, my name is June, I think there's something there that is like claiming that identity for herself, but then also maybe people will start to recognize her as like, oh, you were of Joseph, or you were of what, you know what I mean? Like starting to combine all of those names and people into, she's all June.
Like she mentions with her mom, she keeps the ear cuff.
Yes.
And it's sort of like a badge of honor or just her bona fides. Like,
I think it gives her street cred.
I am who I say I am. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have this if I wasn't.
Yeah. And you shouldn't question me for all I've been through, or I wouldn't have this bad boy in my ear.
We're both pointing to our ears.
We are both pointing at our ears. Super funny. So overall, what did you think about June's storyline in this episode? I mean, she has to decide to leave her child behind with Holly and go back out again. How did you feel about her strut walking away with sort of that shadow and the lit sky behind her, and she's like walking off to like go have her, you know, next battle?
The whole episode is meant to contrast the two women and what motivates them, what drives them, and the length that they'll go to get it. And it's kind of cut back and forth, you know, to show that Serena's starting block is going to be this brand new house and the leader of a community, whereas June is going to be maybe accepted as a leader, maybe by this group in this ramshackle, rundown. It's a large house. It would have been a nice house,
right?
But it's not anymore.
But it's neglected and falling apart.
And so we have this neat contrast, but with June, it had been about finding Hannah and self-preservation, but that's always been protection oriented. She organized angel flight, you know, to protect others. And this is more of that. It's not like out of character for her to need to protect Moira and the father of her child, Luke.
Yeah, because what their relationship is at this point is kind of unclear. I mean, I know they're still married and all that kind of stuff, but, we bothered to have that in-depth moment with Holly about like what Nick meant to June. And it was clear that there was still a lot of messiness there, that this still lingers, that Holly's face was like, like, I don't like any of this. And I do not approve. I do think it's cool when you're talking about how the story is paralleled. I think it was really cool that they went back to both of their parents. That we went back to Serena Joy's father and what an influence he was and how a man of faith affected her. Then we have June, mother, woman of science, woman of medicine, and how she was brought up. And both of them going back to their roots, literally, and remembering where they came from, remembering who raised them and who they raised them to be. And watching both of those women sort of like adjust their crowns and take their places in front of their people was very dramatic and very impactful, I think, for the story to see both of them take their rightful places.
In both ways, it felt like coming home in a weird way, even though these were fresh, brand new places physically to them. Emotionally, they were right where they wanted to be.
And and in their own skin, like weirdly comfortable in their own skin, despite their circumstances. They both are where they want to be. And that's wild because that doesn't seem right. But, that moment when Holly says, you're not a soldier, you're not all these other things. And it was like, and she's like, you don't have any idea what I have been, and I agree with that. But as much as I think there's going to be some audience members who might be like, I cannot believe she left Nichole behind. But I am of the mind of like, sometimes moms, I'm saying specifically moms, need to be like, it is better and safer for this kid to be away from me and let me put my head down and be the warrior that I need to be for whatever it is. I have seen that happen. We have 3 special needs kids, and I've seen that happen time and time again. People don't get it necessarily on the outside world who are not in warrior mode, but when you are, you can't have little ones. Sort of like we saw with a Commander Lawrence meeting. You can't have someone playing at your feet, and get everything done. So I do feel like it was credible and legitimate for her to leave Nichole with Holly.
Well, this was the second of 3 episodes dropped on premiere night in 2025. So we're going to bring this episode to a close so that we can pick up on our 3rd episode coverage right after this.
This is Caroline.
And this is Paul. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so that others can find the podcast and enjoy it.
Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.